Owning our story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing that we will ever do. Brené Brown. Have you ever felt that invisible pull, that heavy cloak of discomfort when you try to step into your authentic self? Have you ever held back a brilliant idea, a heartfelt confession, or even just a simple laugh? Because a silent voice whispered, "Don't. It's not good enough. You're not good enough." Today, we're venturing into the shadows of the human psyche to confront one of its most insidious architects, shame. This isn't just about feeling bad. It's about a deep-seated belief that you are raw, bad, fundamentally flawed. We'll uncover its hidden origins, how it subtly sabotages your life, and most importantly, how to finally break free from its suffocating grip. There's a silent force that operates in the deepest shadows of the human mind. It corrodes self-esteem, distorts the perception of personal worth, and precisely dictates the invisible limits of what someone believes they are truly deserving to live, to express, to feel. This force doesn't impose itself with physical violence, but with an overwhelming psychological subtlety. Its name is shame. Few emotions are as profoundly misunderstood, yet so deeply rooted as shame. It's an emotional parasite that feeds on silence, secrecy, and self-accusation. While guilt refers to a specific behavior, "I did something wrong," shame goes much further. It infiltrates identity, making the individual believe, "I did something wrong." It's in this seemingly subtle detail that its devastating, destructive power truly resides. Imagine the weight of carrying that belief every single day. From the earliest years of life, shame begins to form in an almost imperceptible way. It hides in the disapproving gaze of an overwhelmed parent, in the cruel comparisons whispered between siblings. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" In the subtle criticisms about a child's natural body, their unique way of speaking, or their budding personality. The child, still lacking the resources to question these powerful messages, internalizes the idea that there is something inherently wrong with them, not with what they did, but with who they are at their core. And thus, the process of internal fragmentation begins. To be accepted, they learn to hide parts of themselves. To be loved, they must adapt to external expectations, often sacrificing their own needs and desires. Authenticity is brutally sacrificed on the altar of approval. This becomes the blueprint for how they navigate the world, always seeking validation, always fearing exposure. Over time, these ingrained messages evolve into a constant internal voice, an invisible judge that scrutinizes every step, every thought, every natural impulse with suspicion. This is why so many adults live trapped within themselves, meticulously policing their own desires, suffocating genuine emotions, and avoiding any trace of vulnerability. They've been conditioned to believe that truly showing who they are would make them utterly unworthy of love, respect, or belonging. Shame then transforms into a deeply ingrained system of control, a psychological mechanism that tragically prevents individuals from living freely. They adapt, they mold themselves, they hide, not because they genuinely want to, but because they feel they need to for survival. The longer this destructive structure operates unchallenged, the more it fuses with the very identity. The person stops consciously realizing they are ashamed and begins to believe they are, in fact, inherently inferior, fundamentally inadequate, perpetually defective. This belief becomes their unshakable reality, forming the core of their self-perception. But here's the unsettling truth most people don't realize. This isn't an absolute truth about who you are. This video exists to break that agonizing cycle, to peel back the layers and reveal the hidden gears of shame, showing you that it is not an absolute truth, about who you are, but rather a learned system imposed and maintained primarily by the fear of social judgment. Understanding how shame forms, how it acts, and most importantly, how to deactivate it, is one of the most profoundly liberating steps anyone can take. And that is precisely what you are about to discover right now. Distinguishing guilt from shame, the subtle devastation. To truly grasp the destructive power of shame is essential to differentiate it from an emotion with which it's often confused: guilt. While both are linked to feelings of inadequacy or wrongdoing, they operate on radically distinct levels of the human psyche and carry very different consequences for an individual's emotional development and overall well-being. This distinction is critical. Guilt is a healthy, adaptive emotional response when it aligns with our moral awareness. It alerts us that we have done something that violated our own values, or perhaps harmed another person. When genuinely felt, guilt can lead to powerful self-correction, genuine apology, valuable learning, and profound personal growth. It's like an internal traffic signal, indicating that something needs to be corrected, but crucially, it does not compromise the essence of who we are. The message of guilt is clear and actionable. You did something wrong. Now fix it. Shame, on the other hand, transcends the boundary of behavior and directly impacts your very identity. It doesn't say that you did something bad. It asserts that you bad. Consider a common scenario. You miss a deadline at work. Guilt says, I messed up that report. I need to apologize and fix it. Shame whispers, I'm such an incompetent failure. I'm not cut out for this job. This seemingly subtle distinction carries absolutely devastating implications. Because while guilt preserves a sense of dignity, shame systematically destroys it. It silently corrodes self-esteem, poisons self-perception, and turns every mistake, every rejection, every imperfection into undeniable evidence of your existential inadequacy. People dominated by shame don't say, I made a mistake. They say, you made a mistake. And when this feeling becomes chronic, it doesn't just limit the authentic expression of the person. It forms the very foundation of a toxic identity. It's from this deep-seated belief that destructive behavior patterns take root. Extreme perfectionism, paralyzing procrastination, the compulsive need to please everyone, and even self-destructive behaviors like addiction or self-harm. All are desperate attempts to compensate for or hide what the person believes to be a fundamental, unfixable flaw within themselves. Shame is silent, but utterly relentless. Unlike guilt, which can often be rationally processed and resolved, shame seeps into the body, into emotional memory, into unconscious gestures and habits. It manifests in downcast eyes, in rigid body language, in a palpable difficulty, exposing one's true self, in accepting oneself, in genuinely loving oneself. And the most dangerous part, it perfectly camouflages itself. Often, we don't even realize that we are operating from a place of deep shame, because it has already become an integral part of our way of being, our default setting. But where, after all, does this corrosive shame truly begin? How does something so destructive settle in so early and so deeply within the human mind? In the next section, we'll investigate the shocking origins of shame and discover how, from childhood, we are unwittingly trained to believe there's something fundamentally wrong with simply being who we are. The genesis of our inner critic, where shame takes root. Shame does not arise with the human being at birth. It is constructed, painstakingly conditioned, and devastatingly transmitted from generation to generation. No child comes into the world believing there is something inherently wrong with themselves. On the contrary, the natural, unadulterated state of the human being is pure authenticity, expressing desires, emotions, and impulses without fear, without censorship, without a second thought. However, this pure and spontaneous state begins to be repressed very early, usually by those who should protect and nurture that authenticity: parents, caregivers, teachers, and society as a whole. Think about it. A child expressing big emotions might be told, "Stop crying, there's nothing to be sad about." Or, "Don't be angry, that's not nice." It all starts with small gestures that seem innocuous, even well-intentioned. A disapproving look when the child expresses a too loud joy. A subtle comparison between siblings. "Why can't you be organized like your sister?" An impatient comment in response to a curious question, or an exaggerated punishment for something that was merely an attempt to explore the complex world around them. It's in these seemingly minor moments that the child begins to internalize a dangerous, life-altering message. If I am truly myself, I will be punished. If I express what I genuinely feel, I will be rejected. If I show who I really am, I will not be loved. This process of internalization is deeply traumatic, even if it occurs without shouting or explicit aggression. The child, out of an absolute primal need for belonging and survival, learns to shape their behavior to meticulously fit the expectations of adults. They begin to repress emotions considered ugly or unacceptable: anger, sadness, fear, frustration. They learn that showing vulnerability is a sign of weakness, that being spontaneous is inappropriate, perhaps even rude. And thus, the first, devastating psychic division arises. The true self, the authentic core, is locked away in an internal vault, and a mask is painstakingly created in its place. This mask is what renowned therapist John Bradshaw, in his seminal work, Healing the Shame That Binds You, describes as the false self, an identity construction shaped not by what the person is, but by what they believe they need to be to receive acceptance and avoid pain. The individual alienates themselves from their very essence to avoid the crushing pain of being rejected. But this profound alienation comes at an exceptionally high price. It generates a gaping internal void, a constant, gnawing feeling of inadequacy, and an insatiable, lifelong quest for external validation. Think of the influencer chasing likes, the corporate executive sacrificing health for promotion, the people pleaser saying yes when they mean no. Over time, this dynamic becomes completely automatic, an unconscious habit. The adult, who was once a shamed child, learns to censor their own thoughts and emotions even before expressing them. They don't even realize they're hiding, because they've long forgotten who they were before they meticulously adapted. And worse still, they often begin to judge and reject others with the same unforgiving rigor with which they were once judged. Internalized shame doesn't just trap us. It becomes a destructive pattern that we unconsciously perpetuate in our relationships, in our parenting styles, and even in our professional lives. It's a self-reinforcing cycle of pain and hiding. And to truly break it, we need to understand how this insidious shame, once implanted, transforms into a relentless internal system of surveillance. A psychological mechanism that prevents us from ever living with true freedom and authentic truth. In the next section, we will delve deeper into how shame begins to control every gesture, every thought, every single choice, as if we were being watched all the time by an invisible judge who never, ever sleeps. What if the biggest barrier to your freedom isn't outside you, but a silent warden within? The panopticon of the mind. Shame as internal surveillance. Once installed, shame ceases to be just a reactive emotion and transforms into a true system of psychic surveillance. It becomes a constant, omnipresent companion, an invisible judge that meticulously accompanies your every thought, every gesture, every spontaneous impulse. And the most perverse part, this judge isn't external. It lives intimately within you. This internal surveillance is so subtle and automated that most people don't even realize they are constantly being observed by it themselves. It's that insidious internal voice that whispers, Don't talk too much. You'll sound foolish. Or, don't show that emotion. It's a weakness. That idea is ridiculous. No one will take you seriously. It's the overwhelming discomfort that arises when you express yourself authentically, followed by a sudden wave of deep embarrassment, as if you've committed an unforgivable crime simply for being true. It's the constant self-censorship, the overwhelming need for external approval for every decision, the irrational, paralyzing fear of not being accepted by others, or worse, by yourself. This internal judge, shaped by painful childhood experiences and relentlessly reinforced throughout life, settles in as a permanent punitive instance. It doesn't guide you with wisdom. It condemns. It doesn't correct wisely. It humiliates. And the more deeply internalized it becomes, the more the individual tragically confuses this punishing voice with their own legitimate conscience. But it is not a conscience. It is purely conditioning, a learned response. It is not prudence or wisdom. It is raw fear, disguised as a logical reason to hold back. This system of surveillance acts like a prison without walls. It tragically prevents the individual from experiencing the exhilarating freedom of simply being who they are. Desires are repressed, filtered, or outright denied. Creative ideas are meticulously filtered through a lens of judgment. Spontaneity is utterly sacrificed on the altar of control. The person lives in perpetual self-monitoring, constantly anticipating judgments, tirelessly avoiding any situation that might expose them to the scrutinizing gaze of others. But here's the crucial, almost terrifying paradox. The real problem isn't the gaze of others. It is the interjected gaze, the internalized critic, which is constantly triggering the alarm of shame within you. Think of Michel Foucault in his groundbreaking analysis of power and social control, describing how the vigilant gaze becomes most effective when it is internalized by the individual. Power then no longer needs to be exercised from the outside in. It is automated, naturalized, and terrifyingly internalized. Shame works exactly this way. It is the insidious psychological mechanism that ensures conformity, without the explicit need for external coercion. It's why you might self-sabotage a promotion, not because your boss expects it, but because you expect to fail and deserve it. And what is the devastating result of this constant, internal self-policing? A life driven entirely by fear. Fear of failure, fear of being seen, fear of not being enough, fear of making a mistake, fear of success. Shame relentlessly empties the individual of courage, creativity, and authentic self-expression. It transforms them into a profoundly reduced version of themselves, an acceptable, palatable, domesticated version, far from their true potential. But if shame operates in such a silent and frighteningly effective way, how can we possibly identify it? How can we perceive when we are truly under its pervasive, subtle control? In the next section, we will learn to recognize the often hidden triggers of shame, the internal voices that relentlessly sabotage us, and the destructive thought patterns that keep this invisible judge constantly active, so that we can finally begin the crucial process of deactivating this insidious system, unmasking the saboteur, recognizing shame's footprint. Shame rarely presents itself in an obvious, dramatic way. It doesn't knock on your door announcing its arrival with a loud bang. Instead, it cunningly disguises itself, adopting soft, reasonable tones, internal phrases that sound like common sense, and automatic gestures that seem utterly natural. Therefore, identifying it is a meticulous, often painful, work of profound self-awareness. It is also one of the most challenging, yet ultimately liberating, steps in the journey to inner freedom. To begin with, it's essential to understand that shame lives powerfully in your language, specifically, your internal monologue. Pay extremely close attention to the words you repeat to yourself in moments of difficulty or vulnerability. Phrases like, "I'm a failure. No one will ever accept me this way. I'm just not good enough. I always mess everything up. I'm fundamentally broken." All these expressions reveal the insidious, deep presence of shame. They are not just describing a situation. They are making an ontological statement about they see who you are at your very core. This is the devastating heart of shame. It does not attack your behavior. It attacks your very being, your intrinsic worth. It tells you that you are fundamentally flawed. Another clear indication of shame's presence is pervasive patterns of avoidance. Shame powerfully manifests when you flee from situations where you could be seen more deeply, more genuinely. You might avoid public speaking, expressing strong opinions in group settings, taking creative risks, stating your true desires, or setting firm personal boundaries. This isn't necessarily due to a lack of ability or skills, but because there's a paralyzing, unconscious fear that by truly showing yourself, you will be unmasked as someone utterly unworthy of love, belonging, or success. Shame thrives and flourishes on the fear of exposure, the terror of being truly seen for who you believe you are, flawed. Furthermore, shame relentlessly manifests in a myriad of self-sabotaging behaviors. Chronic procrastination, various addictions, compulsive people-pleasing, social isolation, and extreme perfectionism. All these patterns have deep, intricate roots in shame. They are often unconscious strategies designed to desperately avoid the excruciating pain of judgment, the crushing pain of rejection, or the agonizing pain of not being enough. Often, the individual doesn't even realize they are actively sabotaging themselves. They just feel a pervasive weight, an inexplicable fatigue, an insistent internal voice that whispers, "It's not worth trying. You'll just fail anyway." There is also a disturbing tendency to project shame onto others. People deeply dominated by internal shame often become overly critical, harshly judgmental, or excessively demanding of others. This happens because by attacking others, they desperately try to numb the profound pain they feel inside. It's as if they are unconsciously saying, "If I can't accept myself as I am, then no one else deserves to be accepted as we are." Recognizing these deeply ingrained signs is painful, truly. It requires immense courage, unwavering patience, and profound honesty with oneself. But it is also monumentally liberating, because from the crucial moment you truly identify the voice of shame, you begin the transformative process of separating what is genuinely from what is merely conditioning. You start to realize that this internal judge, this relentless critic, is not your ultimate truth. It is simply an echo of a painful past. And then the inevitable, urgent question arises. What do we do with this knowledge? Now that you recognize this subtle, pervasive enemy, how do you truly deactivate it? How do you finally silence those insidious internal voices that relentlessly sabotage your freedom, your joy, your very existence? The answer lies in self-compassion, but not that superficial, trendy version that trivializes deep suffering. I'm talking about an active, profound, and profoundly courageous compassion. In the next section, you will finally understand how to cultivate this transformative strength and truly begin to break the ironclad cycle of shame. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebooks. Beyond the Shadow Eye breaks down Jung's core ideas, while Dialogues with the Unconscious gives you a 30-day path to apply them in your life. Both are linked in the pinned comment. Embracing your full self, the power of self-compassion. Shame takes its deepest, most agonizing roots when a person truly believes they need to earn love, acceptance, and respect. When they start to condition their own intrinsic worth on their performance, their appearance, or an idealized behavior that can never be fully and sustainably maintained. Breaking this suffocating cycle requires much more than mere willpower or positive affirmations. It requires the profound courage to confront one's own deepest wounds, and above all, it demands a radical, unwavering self-compassion. Self-compassion, contrary to what many mistakenly think, is not treating oneself with blind indulgence or making excuses. It is not pretending that nothing hurts or that every problem will magically disappear. It is certainly not repeating empty mantras in the mirror, trying to force a fragile self-esteem. True self-compassion is a revolutionary, transformative act. It is recognizing your own profound pain and suffering with crystal clear honesty, and still choosing to remain fully present with it, rather than escaping or numbly pushing it away. It is looking at the most vulnerable, raw parts of yourself, your flaws, your imperfections, your scars, without contempt, without judgment, and without any urge to escape. It is creating an internal sanctuary, a sacred space where you can exist wholly and completely, even with all your perceived flaws, your genuine imperfections, and your accumulated scars. Dr. Kristin Neff, one of the leading authorities on self-compassion, eloquently states that this practice is not a weakness, but a profoundly powerful form of emotional self-regulation, a superpower for your mind. When you genuinely practice self-compassion, your nervous system begins to slowly, steadily come out of a constant state of hyper-vigilant alert. You exit the threat mode, constantly activated by shame, and consciously enter a much-needed safety mode. And it is only in this state of genuine inner safety that true, lasting growth and healing can profoundly occur. But to truly get there, one must navigate through a crucial, often uncomfortable phase, directly confronting the internal voice of shame. This voice, which for years, perhaps decades, has been considered an unassailable, unquestionable truth about who you are, desperately needs to be challenged. You begin to ask, with genuine curiosity and firm resolve, who taught me to see myself this way? Where did this paralyzing belief that I am inherently inadequate truly come from? What concrete evidence makes me believe that my intrinsic worth depends entirely on others' approval or my flawless performance? These questions are not mere rhetorical exercises. They are powerful instruments of dismantling, tools for demolition of old, false beliefs. Because as you answer them with unflinching honesty, you realize that the pervasive shame you carry was not born with you. It was deeply learned, painstakingly conditioned, absorbed from your environment. And everything that has been learned can, with intention and effort, be profoundly reconfigured, unlearned, or even replaced. This is the ultimate turning point, the profound realization that I are not the problem. You have a problem, the learned, insidious system of shame. But that does not define who you are as a whole, worthy being. Practicing self-compassion also means allowing yourself to make mistakes without self-destruction. It is profoundly understanding that failure, setbacks, and missteps are an utterly indispensable part of the universal human experience, and that there is absolutely no authentic path through life without stumbling, without moments of imperfection. It is starting to treat yourself with the same profound care, empathy, and understanding as you would a wounded, frightened child, firmly but gently, with responsibility for your actions, but also with unconditional love and forgiveness. And gradually, miraculously, the cycle begins to break. Shame, once an absolute tyrannical ruler over your identity, starts to slowly, steadily lose its suffocating power. It won't disappear immediately, no. It will still try to show up. It will still whisper those old, familiar lies in moments of vulnerability. But now, You have the tools to recognize it. And crucially, it loses its monopoly over your identity. And ithai is true freedom. But the journey doesn't end here, because shame, as we've stated, survives primarily in the dark. To truly weaken it, to drain its last vestiges of power, it must be relentlessly exposed to the light. From shadow to light, exposing shame for true freedom. Shame is a psychological parasite that can only truly survive and thrive in environments of darkness, silence, and absolute secrecy. It feeds voraciously on what is not said, on what is meticulously hidden away, on what you desperately try to erase and deny within yourself. But when you summon the profound courage to look at it directly, to name it, to tell your story, even if just to yourself in a journal or to one trusted friend, something truly extraordinary happens. Shame loses its suffocating grip, not because it disappears completely and forever. It will still try to show up. It will still whisper those old, familiar lies in moments of profound vulnerability or stress. But now you ganoi, that voice is not you. You understand that that pain does not define your intrinsic worth. You realize that the prison you felt trapped in is not, in fact, eternal or real. Shame, once illuminated by the unflinching light of awareness and the warmth of self-compassion, begins to fundamentally dissolve, because it was never a truth to begin with, just a cleverly constructed illusion. A painful lie repeated so many times by so many sources that it came to seem undeniably real, an integral part of your being. The key to living an authentic, courageous, and fulfilling life is not in trying to become flawlessly perfect. It is, ironically, in allowing yourself to be profoundly, beautifully human, to err, to breathe freely, to feel deeply, to change your mind, to be vulnerable, to fail, and to continue loving yourself fiercely through it all. Shame tries to convince you that there is something deep within you that, if exposed, will make no one love you, not even yourself. The profound truth is exactly the opposite. It is precisely when you expose yourself with radical honesty and vulnerability that real, unconditional love becomes genuinely possible, including the most vital love of all. At this very moment, you may be carrying old heavy weights, phrases you heard in childhood, disapproving looks that mocked you, experiences that left deep, painful scars. But now, you have the foundational tools. Now, you have the empowering language. Now, you truly know where to look and what to name. And when you see clearly, you are no longer trapped. You no longer need to hide any part of yourself. You no longer need to meticulously mold yourself into someone you're not. You no longer need to constantly apologize for your very existence. You are not your trauma. You are not your past failures. You are not the distorted, limited image that someone once projected onto you. You are a whole, worthy, capable, and profoundly beautiful human being, right here, right now. And from this moment forward, every courageous step you take toward your authentic truth will be a powerful, decisive blow against that insidious internal system that tried so desperately to keep you small, to keep you hidden. Conclusion. We've journeyed through the psychological labyrinth of shame, uncovering its subtle mechanisms, its origins, and its devastating impact on our lives. Remember, guilt is about what you did. Shame is about who you are. Recognize its voice in your self-talk, in your avoidance, in your self-sabotage. And remember the revolutionary power of self-compassion to disarm it. If this video touched something profound within you, if it resonated with your own unspoken experiences, please comment below. Share your insights. Perhaps tell us one small step you're ready to take towards living with truth. Your vulnerability can be a powerful beacon, inspiring countless others who are still trapped in silence. And if you know someone who desperately needs to hear this message, share this video. Spread this vital light. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more insights into the depths of the human mind. Keep watching. The next video is crucial for your ongoing journey of liberation. You have already started this transformative process. Don't stop now. Shame will not control you again. Never again.